Dhamaka, Dhamaka.
Dhamaka.
My name is Rekha.
जहाँ खड़े हो जाते हैं लाइन वहीं से शुरू होती है।
तुमने कभी किसी से प्यार किया?
Hi and welcome to a new episode of Khandaan Podcast. My name is Asim Bernie and I'm joined with my lovely co-host Amrita and Sujoy. Hey Amrita, hey Sujoy.
Hey everybody.
Hello.
We are continuing our 80s Dhamaka series with Umrao Jaan, 1981 movie starring Rekha and nobody else. It's just Rekha. Nothing else is important. Just Rekha. Call the movie Rekha. Directed by Muzaffar Ali, starring Farooq Sheikh too, and a bunch of other actors. This was one you were dreading, Amrita. This was one you were warning us. The red flags were red flagging, basically.
Well, I was pretty sure that I was the only one who had actually watched this movie out of the three of us.
Yeah, I've not watched this movie.
Yes, I was absolutely certain that you had not watched it, and I was like 90% certain that Sujoy had not watched it. But maybe it was playing on DD or something, and then he might have watched it. But did you watch it before, Sujoy?
No, I have watched all the songs before, but I have not sat down and watched the entirety of the movie. I know bits and pieces of it, but not the whole movie.
Did you watch the songs, Asim?
I knew the songs, and I mean, I think I've seen the songs. There's not much going on in the songs. I just sitting and singing, right? So I've seen parts of it for sure.
Yeah. I just want people to know that, during one of the Coke Studio seasons, there was a ghazal. I can't remember which one it was. I think it was Ranjish Hi Sahi or something came out. And I was like, oh my God, it's so beautiful. And then Asim said, I don't like all this adultery type music. The moment Asim was like, let's do Umrao Jaan, I was like, yeah, it's like 100% adultery type music.
Yeah. Old people adultery, that was the thing. Old people cheating on their wives, thinking about this girlfriend they used to exchange glances with on the bus.
Umrao Jaan is like the OG of old people and adultery music. Yeah. So I was like, I don't think this is going to be a good time.
I'm an Uchi Hai building guy watching Umrao Jaan. This is what's happening here. But I remember when we picked this movie, you were already kind of dreading it. But the reason is I actually got it from Wikipedia, I think. So upon release, Umrao Jaan received widespread critical acclaim, specifically for Ali's direction and Rekha's lead performance. Widely considered one of the greatest of Hindi cinema, it also emerged as a commercial success, ranking as one of the highest grossing film of the year. At the 29th National Awards, Umrao Jaan won 4 awards, including Best Actress, Best Director, and Best Music. So I knew of this movie, and I knew that this was a very beloved movie. And even because it's very hard to find a decent print. We had to watch it on YouTube, and it was really, really bad. And you go to the comment section, it's like all people just praising this, loving this movie. It's all like, I love Pakistan, I give my life for Pakistan, basically. That's what's going on. And I'm like, that's great. So we had to cover this movie. We had to, it's the 80s, we had to cover the movie. So that's why Umrao Jaan is part of the package.
I think it's like you're Charlie Brown, and Hindi cinema is constantly offering you a football to kick. Hindi cinema is like Lucy, and it's just like, look, not Hindi cinema, but Hindi cinema audiences are Lucy, and they come up to you with a football, and they're just like, no, this football is special. And I need you to understand that people will say one thing, but it is absolutely never followed through with their behavior. 100% of the movies that Bollywood audiences talk about, oh my God, that is cinema, how wonderful. nobody cares
This
about
was
them.
also one of the 50 movies I loved by Anupama Chopra when she was
Yeah,
making like film companion things. So
sure.
she also made a video. So it is. I'm not. I'm just saying. Like
See,
a lot of
Anupama
people are
Chopra.
gaslighting me, basically.
No, see, Anupama Chopra, yes, I believe her. When Anupama Chopra says that she loves this movie, I believe her. But when, like, like rando Bollywood audiences are just like, oh my God, have you seen Arth and have you seen Umrao Jaan and have you seen Garam Hawa? I know for a fact that none of these people like any of these movies. They just feel as if they should say, oh, I love this film because, it gives them a certain cachet.
They say garam hawa, but they mean garam masala.
घर में वही चलता है,
You guys having said that, I actually liked Umrao Jaan.
I saw your letterbox review and I was like, yes, Joy is quite on board, man. Like I'm like,
But I don't know.
I've not gotten into the movie yet. I'm just saying I've not given my opinion on it.
Yeah,
But I was very happy to see that you were quite positive about it.
No, I'm not sure where my sort of liking for this movie came from, whether it was surrendering to the idea that I cannot switch it off because I have to watch it all the way through, and whether it was like Stockholm Syndrome sort of seeping into me, or it was the movie itself. There is a certain surrender required, I think.
So Stockholm Syndrome only happens to white people. It doesn't happen to brown people.
Okay.
That's the thing. It's an aspect of Stockholm Syndrome that only happens to white people.
It is in Stockholm.
You have to be from Stockholm.
Not in
or at least look like you come from Stockholm.
Okay, I get it.
So yeah, I mean, let's get started. Sujoy, you first. Like, what do you think of Umrao Jaan? Oh wait, should we do Amrita? Do you want to do like a little summary of it first? Maybe that would be a good idea.
Yes. So I'll tell you what the IMDb summary is, which is Amiran is sold to a brothel by a corrupt cop after her father testifies against him. Many years later, she grows up to be an accomplished poetess and a renowned courtesan, Umrao Jaan. So that is correct. Like that.
He wasn't a cop.
But he
was a criminal.
Did go to jail. Yeah, he goes to jail because her dad,
testified. He was a daroga. The father was a daroga. So he's the cop technically.
Yeah. So I think like maybe, so this guy's name is Dilavar, and he, he runs a pigeon business. I think like that's
there was stuff going on about pigeons too.
Yeah. But he basically kidnaps Amiran and sells her to a brothel. And then, she grows up and becomes this very, very beautiful Rekha. And she then falls in love with a local Nawab who has, a big ego and a spine made of cooked noodle. And it's also there's a lot of like political unrest happening. There's like war and all sorts of things happening. And she tries to go home and she realizes that some things can never happen. And it's ultimately a tragic tale, but it's also the story of a woman who's surviving the tragedies in her life. That's what Umrao Jaan is.
Sujoy, your thoughts on Umrao Jaan?
As I said, like it really takes you on this really tiresome journey, and if it really tests you whether you are willing to sit through that for the love of Rekha, and it really tests your fandom of Rekha in a way, I think. But if you are enamored by the beauty, the lyricism and the poetry at display, the music that happens on this journey, and everything that happens alongside with that, I think the tragedy in a way is we watch all of this for a certain catharsism as an audience, right? When the tragedy unfurls and we sort of cry alongside with the tragedy and sort of empathize and sympathize with these characters. I think it is a beautiful tragedy in that way, where if you are willing to surrender that, I know we don't necessarily have that sort of a patience as audience anymore, but Umrao Jaan requires you to have that. And I think I was in that frame of mind. because by the end, when one tragedy and then another sort of piles on this character, and Rekha just breaks down at the end, where you have all these successive, tragedies accumulating on herself. It ends on a weird note for me, but all of that like cumulatively worked for me, and that is only because of Rekha. Only and only because of Rekha, her emotiveness, her acting. It's just so beautiful. Like nobody else could have been Umrao Jaan, and possibly we will talk about the remake in a later. But yeah, this movie worked for me just because of Rekha and the music that accompanies this movie.
Amrita, what about you? You'd seen it before, you were warning us, but how did it feel revisiting it?
So my warnings were really for you guys. It wasn't really for me. Like I don't actually have any problems with this film. It is what Sujoy said earlier about it being an immersive experience that requires you to surrender to its storytelling. That is very true. This is very much an art movie. It is not meant to be a commercial movie. It solidly belongs to the parallel cinema movement, and it sort of builds. It's so interesting, this film, because it builds on Rekha's career up till that point. I think earlier on when we were talking about something else, Asim was talking about how Amrish Puri is often used in the 80s to give weight to the character of a villain, because we know who he is and he brings this history of menace to his roles. And it's the same thing for Rekha. She's played that courtesan with a heart of gold in so many movies. And she brings that, like that gravitas and that sensibility to this role, which is quite amazing, according to me, because she's as South Indian as they come. I mean,
Yeah.
she's super South Indian, and she's like a dark complexion South Indian woman,
And
and
that
she's
is
playing
kind of
this.
addressed as well in the beginning.
Yeah. And she plays this Lucknowi Tawayef, and she does it so well that I don't think we've had anyone who's done that role any better than Rekha in the nearly 40 years since this movie has come out, or more than 40 years actually, because I think this movie came out in 1981. So yeah, there's so many things going on for this film, but also I think when modern audiences are told to go watch this as a classic, I don't think they're given that caveat. And I think it's very important to sort of put in a little warning up front, being like, listen, you might be used to a certain level of filmmaking, and this is not that.
Yeah. I think I was worried going into this movie because it's just not my genre, and you knew it, but I did enjoy it because it's so different from anything we've covered. Like, we you can maybe put it close to Earth, but Earth is not like both are maybe parallel or art movies, but this is a very like. And I was watching some interviews with Muzaffar Ali, the director, and he is a very kind of like Sanjay Leela Bhansali kind of character, right? Like in kurtas, long flowy hair. I'm a painter and I'm an artist, and I'm a also he's also like what do you say? Sorry, I blank on names because I'm like fasting, so sometimes my brain just goes like for a toss. But like he's like active in causes and things like that,
Right.
So he's like very like Sanjay Leela Bhansali. He's like, yeah, I paint all my scenes out and stuff like that, and I think that shows very much in this movie within that era where. To me, and I think it's Rekha really, because the command of Rekha and everybody else have such a command of the language too, right? That it makes Hira Mandi, because that was obviously the connection I was making with Hira Mandi, right? Hira Mandi almost feels like cosplay compared to this. Where, although it doesn't make sense, this was also shot in 1980, 1981. It's not that it was of that era. But the way people are, the weight that they're bringing to these characters, the there's a language, there's a way of acting that has since gotten lost, and not enough actors can kind of connect with that. I think Sonakshi Sinha can to a certain degree. I
Yeah.
think Aditi Rao Hedri can to a certain degree, but I don't think Manisha could. That kind of thing. Maybe they should have gone with Mahira instead. But I do think it the storytelling is very slow paced, but
Yeah.
it still doesn't give me enough of what I needed of this world. The way it's edited, the way the story kind of comes in, it jumps from one place to another and doesn't really explain who is who, what is happening. And I think if they do want to remake, they remade it with Aishwarya Rai and Abhishek later on. But what I'm more excited about, it was announced that this is going to be remade in Pakistan by Sajjal Ali in an 8-part series. And that excites me because I think this
Yeah.
does need more time, that you
Hmm.
can explain these characters. Who is Nasiruddin's character. Like, I don't never really understood what the thing was. He was almost they were sleeping together for a second, and then they got caught, and then he's still kind of like her
He's the pimp.
lover.
He's the
He
pimp.
is, yeah, but I think it's like, who is this guy? Like, why is he there? Like, he's a pimp, but like all of these things were happening. Like, suddenly the reveal of this lady coming in, and no, Rekha going to this house and then getting insulted. Like, who are these people? A lot of these things, they were not really explained really well to me, where I was like, oh, what's going on? And I think having maybe more time in this world would make it a better storytelling. But I'll be honest, there were also moments where I just watched the movie on 1.25 speed, because
Uh-huh.
it was just taking it's so languid in its spacing, but it's still not giving me enough in terms of
Yeah.
storytelling. And I think that's the problem. The main hook is just how mesmerizing Rekha is, and I wish I just had a better print of this movie, that I could really also appreciate the costumes, the design, the world, because they put a lot of effort in that, and it doesn't show. But on the other hand, because it was a bad print, it almost feels like you're peering in the past. Like, it feels like, it is like something from a bygone era where, everybody was just in the candlelights and there were not good lighting and stuff like that. So yeah, no, I'm glad I watched the movie.
I sent you the DVD rip, but you clearly did not watch that.
It wasn't working. It was the link wasn't like
Yeah.
working for me.
Oh.
I
So that's
couldn't.
what yeah,
I had
yeah,
another
and I
question.
was like, I'm already halfway through. I'll just
Right.
finish it the way I have. You guys know my feelings about Farooq Sheikh.
Mhm.
This is a very Farooq Sheikh role. I also laughed at the point where his name is written in the French version was Farouk, Oque, which I thought was just like an
That's how he
interesting.
spells it.
Is it? I thought it was OORQ. I think that's how I've seen it most of the time.
No,
But
no,
anyway,
I've only ever seen it as like Farouk in that way, like the
okay,
OQUE.
yeah. But
Yeah.
I watch it and I understand why Rekha was obsessed with the most alpha of all alpha males in the 80s when
Uh-huh.
Farooq Sheikh is on their side. This is like
Well, Silsila came out the same year, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I get it. You don't want to be with a Farooq Sheikh.
Yeah. What I don't understand is Asim is a man of contradictions. He's like really tired of this world and watching this at 1.25x speed. And then B, he wants a 8-part series of the same world where he wants to know characters.
Yeah, because told in a more competent manner,
Uh-huh.
I feel like. I think the problem is probably the director, Muzaffar Ali, in this, where I also feel like a lot of the acting is very pantomime-ish. Like, it
Hmm.
does.
It's very play acting.
Yeah.
It is that. It's definitely, this is what I mean when I say that it's like very firmly rooted in the parallel cinema movement, because it's very much
Theater.
people with a theater background
Yeah.
coming together and doing these things. It's like Shabana Azmi's mom. It's
Yeah.
it's Dina Pathak. It's like all these people, and it's very. The print was terrible, but I even if the print had been pristine, you would have seen that the sets, they were sort of built on actual locations, and I really really loved the way that they were using these ruins basically
Hmm.
into the thing. So it wasn't. See, this is the issue that I have with Bhansali, which is the unrelenting pressure for everything to look beautiful.
Yeah.
Whereas there, like, Muzaffar Ali is a real artist, and he understands that even in ugliness there is a certain kind of beauty, and he's able to bring that out.
It felt lived in. Like,
Yeah.
like the thing is, like, even if these these Havelis and these places were there back in the day, they weren't pristine. There is no way. Even then their walls were kind of like, paints coming off and things like that, because that's just the climate, of India and Pakistan and things like that. So I think this felt much more real to me than anything I've ever seen from
but it also, like, the texture of the reality of these Havelis is that they are very, very hard to maintain, and you get information from the characters themselves of how they struggle from day to day. They are solely relying on Rekha being the breadwinner for this entire quota, and then the BB is like obsessed with her because Rekha is the insurance policy, the only breadwinner, and they have to wait for the next one to succeed Rekha. So you get all those information from the storyline of these characters and why they have to rely on Umrao Jaan to be their breadwinner. And you can't have that simultaneously with a pristine set, which is like, completely clean. And you just don't get that with Bhansali movies.
Yeah, no, I'm glad I watched it for sure. But
what I'm confused is, like you said about Farooq Sheikh's character, and then the Maulvi, like Raj Babbar's character confused the heck out of me, because I think the editing jumps like frantically, and like the whole Raj Babbar angle just came and went before I could even realize, and then I had to catch up. Like, what the hell happened? So the editing
took me 10 minutes to figure out it was Raj Babbar. Like, first of all, like with the hair and the thing, like, I was like, what's going on?
Did you guys watch the Aishwarya Rai Umrao Jaan?
No,
I still haven't.
I watched a little bit of it, but it was unbearable. And like, I see why they cast Aishwarya in it, because, they were just like, oh my gosh, she's so beautiful. It'll be amazing to see her in these pretty clothes. But that's not the point of Umrao Jaan, like, the tragedy is the point of it. And that is something that Rekha can just like turn on like that.
The other thing is that we already said, like, Rekha is Bhanu Rekha Ganeshan. She is as South Indian as it can be. And then she turns into this poetess who's writing Urdu poetry and making it believable. She is reciting her own work to the poet of their sort of Lucknowi Kotha. And that I don't see, like, it's as believable as Aishwarya being a poetess in Ae Dil Hai Mushkil, right? Do you remember that?
Yes. Oh, poor Aishwarya.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Rekha a little bit, because I think we've spoken about like how she's beautiful and everything, but what a performance. Like, holy mother of God. Like, she's honestly, she's mother.
Like she's amazing in like everything I've seen her in. She's amazing in, right? But this is like, I think if you probably ask her, this is probably her favorite role. No, like it feels like this is one where she could really sink her teeth into it and really give nuances and all the things that she seems to like. There's poetry and art and there's dancing, but the dancing is never like, I don't know, like, I don't want to use the word vulgar, but like, it's not like vulgar in the old sense, not in the vulgar of sensual, but like vulgar meaning like, very pedestrian, very... Yeah.
No, she's played a Tawaif in Muqaddar Ka Sikandar before this, right, as Zora Bai, but compared to Salame Ishq Meri Jaan, all the songs in this soundtrack where she's doing the Kathak here, it's very subdued. It's very much a Nawab Saab log dekh rahe hain. It's a performance in a way, not a filmy Zora Bai performance.
So, Amrita, where was Rekha in terms of her career when she made this movie?
Good point.
Where do we kind of place that? Because I think what has come out, Silsila came out that year.
So
I'm
leading up to
checking.
this,
So
she
many.
had like Ghar was released 78. Mukaddar Ka Sikandar came before this. Natwar Lal, and then 1980, just before this, she won the Filmfare for Khoobsurat. Um,
Yeah.
so she was at her, in
So
her peak, I think.
So yes, so she arrived in Hindi cinema in 1970 with Sawan Badon, and for a long time she was just sort of, she went through that struggle period of just being sexualized and objectified, and not really having much to do,
Hmm.
and she also received a whole bunch of racial discrimination for being dark skinned, for her accent. On her very first film, like Biswajit assaulted her in front of like the entire cast and crew, and like she just had to roll with it, and she was like 15 or something when that happened,
Um,
and she was just like in like tears, and nobody really cared because she was just so low down the pecking order. So Rekha really struggled for a long time. And then when she started delivering those hits with Amitabh, I think that's when, and also like, when her relationship with Amitabh became, I mean, I know we're all saying alleged relationship with Amitabh Bachchan. But when her alleged relationship with Amitabh Bachchan began, I think that's when she got a certain amount of protection from
hmm.
the way that the rest of the industry was teaching or was treating her. And she was also a real lightning rod for scandal. And that continued even like, like well past this era.
Yeah.
And it was, so she was, she'd gone through like all these link ups, right? Like I think she was basically linked up to pretty much anybody who was single or married in Bollywood at the time. And she was famously rumored to have married Vinod Mehra.
Hmm.
And his mother apparently like beat her and threw her out of the house when he took her home. Which always, I always wanted to know, like, what was he doing when his mother was like beating up on her? Like, and also, why was his mother beating up on her? Like, she was a really successful actress. Like, I don't, but anyway. Um, so around 1981, I think she was not only a top actress and a sex symbol and, a guy, like a humongous movie star, but she was also getting recognized for her acting chops. And this is like about 10, 11 years after her debut.
Hmm.
And she, like Joy said, like, she won the Filmfare for Khoobsurat, which is a iconic movie up to this day. And then Silsila came out, which was a Mauke Pe Chauka by Yash Chopra, who must have the persuasion skills of, I don't know, angels or something, because he apparently managed to sweet talk Amitabh, Jaya, and Rekha into making that film. And he talks about it too. Like, if you watch that interview that he did with Shah Rukh, he was just like, I just went up to them and said, I don't want any problems, but this is who I want to make this movie with. And they were all just like, okay. And Amitabh said okay. And he apparently convinced the two women to do it, which, wow, that man is a skunk and a half. Like, my God.
Alpha behavior.
Like,
Who are we talking about? Yash
my
Chopra
God.
or Amitabh?
Amitabh Bachchan, like, my God, what a rat. But anyway, so this is the height of the Rekha Amitabh affair,
Mhm.
rumors.
But the
Um,
end also, na, like I'm looking at her IMDb while we're talking. This Silsila was the last movie her and Amitabh worked
yeah,
together on, pretty much. Yeah.
yeah. And I think like she didn't really do a courtesan role either after this,
Hmm.
because I mean, how are you going to follow
How
up
you top
Umrao
this? How
Jaan?
do you top this? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just not possible, right? And it, I think like one of the reasons why this movie is so special in the history of Bollywood is because it's sort of, it is impossible to watch her performance as Umrao slash Amiran
Hmm.
and not also see the parallels with her life as Rekha slash Bhanu Rekha.
Mm.
You know, because both Amiran and Rekha, like, the narrative is always that they wanted stability, they wanted, a stable male figure in their life, who would love them and respect them, and they never had that. And the doors to they were like exploited by the people who should have taken care of them, and they can never really go home. Like the concept of home is something that they're always searching for and can never quite find. um and Rekha, of course, like, she built her own home. She was like, you know what, like, screw all of you, I'm gonna like build myself a home. And that's how she's been living her life for the past several decades. And but both of them, like, like Amiran and slash Umrao Jaan, they go through that badnaam gali, as they call it in Hindi cinema, where people just say things about them and don't really recognize the humanity in them, because all they see is the beauty and the sexiness, you know.
And eventually they both build their own homes, both of them.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the kidnapping scene of Amiran, because I actually found that quite harrowing. The way she gets kidnapped, and the way she's just in that era, like, the dad just her father just kind of leaves her when there's like this convicted criminal next door. But there's this idea where that's how life was, I imagine, right? Like, you had to just kind of like hope for the best, and she just gets kidnapped, and they, like, just the thought of this child being kidnapped and nobody looking for her, it was just like, to the point where she doesn't even, her parents don't even, her mom doesn't even recognize her, and her brother doesn't even want her in the house anymore. It was just such a horrific thing. I mean, it's stupid, but it was like that scene in Bajrangi Bhaijaan where Salman comes back to save Munni. It kind of like made me think of it, like, you kind of wish that like a Bajrangi Bhaijaan comes and saves every daughter that gets kidnapped this way. But it was just the callousness of it, the ease of it, also just the ease of being able to just like snatch a woman, a girl, away from her family, and then forcing her to do this, where the girls are old enough to understand that they have no choice. They cannot rebel. They cannot fight back. They are completely prisoners of it. And then the idea that making this abusive slavery situation into creating bonds of love and creating a bond of family within that, that was such kind of a messed up situation. It was just so horrible that, like, we were talking about, Nasiruddin's character who's playing kind of the pimp, but it's like also the only male character that she can have a relationship with that's of her age. You have the Maulvi character that's helping her with the poetry and stuff like that, and I guess that becomes kind of a surrogate father figure for her to a certain degree, but he's also part of that system that's exploiting her, right? And that was just kind of the inherent tragedy. And I wish the movie had been a bit more explicit about that. And they're not really, but it's very kind of subdued in that. But those moments were really hitting me.
It really expects you to fill the gaps. What the movie is not telling you, it like expects you, like, this is implied in a way. What I found like quite jarring, to be honest, is like the language of the movie is so pristine. It's so Urdu. It's so Lucknow. But then you get these jolts of the language breaking and making me shocked as an audience when, like, Yunus Pervez comes in, and he is the one character who is like, a customer in a way, and he says a randi for the first time, like,
multiple time in the movie. It hits you like a brick, the way they kind of use that word, right?
Because it's so tehzeeb, and then randi, it's just it was such a and then you had Leela Mishra, who plays the, when Umrao visits the I can't exactly remember who the characters were, and she's not welcome in that house, and they have that conflict, and this old lady is like bad mouthing Umrao Jaan in front of everybody, and she relentlessly keeps calling Umrao Jaan as a Randi, and it was like, wow.
Yeah. I think it's just the idea that they've created this. It's a horrific world.
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously there's prostitution and stuff like that, but they created with this veil of with poetry and beauty and like manners and things like that, but when it hits reality, of the Yunus Pervez character, or these other women that treat her horribly, I think the shock becomes so much bigger to us, right? But the other thing that sorry, Surya, you were going to say something?
Yeah. The other thing that I noticed was the volatility of this environment, where the courtesans and their brothel, in a way, or the kotha, is supposedly very high society, and only the nawabs and the rich have access to it. But then, in the blink of an eye, if something happens, the whole system crumbles. Like the British invade, and then everybody is like, just like jhola mein, they move away in the bullock cart, and their whole world is uplifted, uprooted in a way. It's that was shocking as well.
So yeah, I mean, like there's like a context I think that we haven't touched upon for this, in the backdrop for this, for the adult Umrao's life, is the what the British called the Mutiny of 1857, and what Indians, and I don't know if Pakistanis also call this the same thing, but the Indians call the First War of Independence.
Sepoy Mutiny.
And the Sepoy Mutiny. So basically, what is happening with Umrao, and the backdrop to, like all the, like, the reason why she's like sort of shuttling back and forth is not just that she is following her lover, but also the fact that the British are basically dismantling Lucknow. They are killing people. They are destroying property. And these are all like recorded things, because Lucknow was one of the hotspots of the rebellion. And when the British came through, they made sure that Lucknow became uh, an example. And the place where she goes to, from Lucknow, is Kanpur, and Kanpur is the site of a very famous massacre of British people. So when the British came through Kanpur, they basically murdered everybody, like every man who was like above the age of 5. So like these are like points of like historical violence, and then you have like the violence that Umrao is going through as well. And I believe, I have not read this novel. It's based on a novel called Umrao Jaan. I have not read it. It's apparently considered to be the first novel in Urdu. And it's meant to be like a metaphor for India being exploited by, like successive waves of invaders. And, like people who are dazzled by its beauty and its wealth, but in the end only want to exploit it. So yeah, that's a little bit of context.
I wish the movie had given a bit more. I don't think there's even a mention of British at all in the movie, except for one. And I think this is another point that it really struck me watching it, because I think a lot of, at the moment, I've made the joke left and right about masculinity, and I've made this point a few times just generally on the podcast. I just watched Adolescence 2 on Netflix, which is amazing. I would recommend people watching it, which also speaks about masculinity. But then where the Raj Babbar character says that all of these Nawabs, when the British come, they will run with their tails between the legs, basically. And that is a big thought that was kind of playing, like whenever we talk about alpha, beta and stuff like that, like what is a Farooq Sheikh going to do? Like what is he, like even when he's in that room with Yunus Pervez and he's like, I'll shoot you in the arm and all that nonsense that's going on. It's like, they've created all of this false poetic nonsense around it, but when it comes to really like standing up, they can't. And I think it's something that's happened throughout history. Like even if you look at British dandies, or before the French Revolution. There's this idea where we get so enthralled with beauty and manners and things like that. When when the harshness of the real world comes, we're not able to kind of withstand it. And I'm saying this because I feel we're in that time again, where the harshness is coming towards us and we are not ready for it. And I think it's just kind of like this thing that was maybe it's just what's going on in the world at the moment that's just kind of making me think about these things. But like, I have no, like, this whole Nawabiyat era, like I have no respect for it necessarily. Like it's not something that I hold in a high regard, like this idea where we could just like drink wine and be poetic and like just languid in gardens. And I think it appeals to a lot of people. Like, this is something that oh, it was an era of distinguished gentlemen. I don't have that. I don't have that. I
I
think
think
that
it's a very Tory thought process in a way, because it's sort of it's saying that it's very distinguished, but at the cost of what? It's built at the cost of oppression of other people, right? So it's very much that it's totally negating that it's the oppression that's is the foundation of feudalism or of this zamindari and nawabzada culture.
But it's also a very cowardly way, because you're detaching yourself from everything ugly in the world to create your little pristine privileged world where only you are allowed and only you have the money and only you can have access to beautiful women. But the rest of the world may burn and we don't care about it. So it's just like something that, like, it struck me, because that's the one thing that I think Hiramandi did well. They did show that these Nawabs are really despicable, as human beings. I think Hiramandi showed that really well. Whereas here, when we're looking at, the Farooq Sheikh character, yes, he is weak, but I don't think the movie it still kind of exalts this era, which I sometimes have a bit of trouble with. No.
I think it's interesting, like, when you talk about masculinity in this film, because I wouldn't, like, the least problematic person in this, like, man in this film is the pimp. Like, he's genuinely a friend to her, like he's sort of her guard as well, but he cares about her, and he hangs out with her like a friend. And everybody else in her life, from her father, by the way, who is the worst daroga that I have ever seen in my life. Like, when we see him when Amiran is a child, he is so lackadaisical about the fact that the man that he put away in prison has now moved in next door. He's just like, oh yeah, like, yeah, what was I supposed to do? Like, they just put my hand on a Quran and said, testify, and then I was like, okay, I'll testify. And I'm like, you're like the worst.
Yeah.
And poor Amiran has had to basically, and the Maulvi, he's a Maulvi, and he's basically watching this child be dragged into this world of assault and
how many other children has he seen being dragged into this world, right?
And he's just like, let's do some shairi then. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? So the masculinity, the things that this movie wants to say about masculinity are very interesting, I think.
I did not see the Gohar Mirza story arc turn really dark towards the end, though, by the fabricating the marriage statements and dragging her to court just so that Umrao can be kept in business with the BBs. I did not see that coming. But Nasiruddin plays it really well.
And also that he just like says that I have no choice. Like, this is literally I'm one that it's living on begging and scraps, and I have no choice either. So he's also kind of like just stuck in this system where he can't get out of.
So there's also a context that I can't remember if the movie made clear or not, but the context is that he is the illegitimate child of like one of the Nawabs. Like he's and he doesn't have. It's not like he has another way to survive.
Yeah.
Like his only career option or life option really is to be the pimp in the brothel where his mother was bought and sold. So he's just like, well, what am I gonna do?
So this is like this I got from Wikipedia, and that's what I meant when the movie doesn't explain the Nasir character, right? Like there's a lot of context that's not really provided by the movie, and I just think it's a shame when it's a movie that's it's taking is at such a languid pace when there's so many just like essential plot points and like context that you could provide, and it's not doing that.
It's interesting because I feel like I don't know where I got all this context from. I think it's mainly because I have a real interest in that era of Indian history, and therefore, like I've read up like quite a bit about the courtesan culture in that part of the world, etc. And I could just sort of like build these connections based on what I was seeing on screen. But if you don't have that context setting off screen, I don't think you're right. It doesn't really translate on screen.
Yeah, but I think it's just a general theme of men not protecting their women, right? Like Farooq Sheikh can do it. He like the moment where he invites her to her friend's house because he cannot come to the kotha anymore, and then he just leaves her to this abuse by these women. Like, why did you invite her when you knew that the space was not safe, right? And then he just goes off and marries some other woman.
He
Even
has the audacity to invite her to the wedding.
Yeah. I think that's, in a way, it was like a very skewed kind of honorable thing that he was doing. He was like, no, I'll have to face her and tell her. So I think this was the height of his like honor in a way to do this. But also when they're like they're in a park or something, or they're just going somewhere, and one of her friends get kidnapped, right? I was like, what are you doing? Like, who is protecting these women in this park? Like, it's just Nasiruddin Shah. That's it. Nasiruddin Shah and Maulvi is supposed to protect these women. Like, it's just this constant way of nobody can protect women. Not the father, not the lover, not the pimp, not the society, not anybody, and it's just constantly happening throughout
you're talking
the movie.
about Bismillah getting kidnapped.
Yes.
And
even like
weirdly,
when
she ends up in a much safer place than the kotha.
Yeah, but by luck, by chance, right? Like, and also she's saying, okay, I don't think she got married to the Raja Saab, right? He was a courtesan again. So she's again forced into the same role, but in a different situation, right? So she's like, I live like a queen, but she's not a queen. She's living like a queen, right? So there's a difference there. But also just the lack of security where I was like, Yunus Pervez comes into the kotha and he's like super violent. Nobody checks him. Then Raj Babbar comes into the kotha. Nobody checks him. Like there's no checks done, no security provided. These women are just left to their own devices, right? So it's those kind of things were constantly like, and maybe that's just me as the person I am. I have this thing about protecting, right? And it just jars me when this happens, where the father thing already just stood out to me straight away, and it never kind of leaves me. And then I see somebody like Farooq Sheikh, like or Farooq Sheikh's father, you see, where he's like has this relationship where he's also kind of like divorced his mother, I think, and then has another woman or got remarried or just been like gambling his life away, it seems like. I don't know. Again, Amrita, do you have context for what happened there? Because I think I
don't think they're divorced. I think he just is like a neglectful husband. So he has other interests.
And there's a very flexible morals all across. Like the father thinks he's okay to be gambling away or, attending kotas, but he has a problem with his son and attending kotas because obviously. And then there's the BB when they receive Amiran for the first time, they sort of blame it like when Satish Shah's character, what's his name? Dilawar bring the young girls and they are literally buying them. He's like kahan se utha ke le ke aa jate hain. The sin is not upon us, it's these people who captured these girls. If we are not buying them, somebody else will. So we are not responsible for this whole system to work. It's a bad world. let's
Which I
quickly.
kind of tend to agree with, though. I do agree
Yeah.
kind of to a point where the women do not have agency in this situation. It's the men that are kind of instigators to this, right? But so there's also the element where two girls are kidnapped, which again was so horrific, seeing these two little girls in a, and they're just like hugging each other and crying about their faith. And then they get split up.
Mhm.
And then one of the girls later on gets married to Farooq Sheikh, right?
Yeah.
That's the person he's married to.
Yeah.
Again, the movie goes very quickly about all of those things. I even feel like the last 20 minutes of this movie, there's like large chapters that are happening, which is like 3-4 minutes. I was like looking
Mhm.
at the counter of my movie, I was like, wait, there's only 15 minutes left, and she meets her mother. She comes
But
back to Lucknow. She leaves. Yeah.
you saw the edited version though, which is like 2 hours and some minutes long. In the DVD, it's 2 hours 24 minutes, where it's pretty okay, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you're talking about the tragedy of her, escaping Lucknow and going to these other cities because they are trying to escape from the British, and then she comes across Ramdev, who was the little girl with whom she was getting sold off to in Lucknow, and they have this conversation about, if it was her who got sold first, then Umrao would have been the one getting married to this guy, and then the switcheroo would have been the fate, perhaps, and then she realizes that Farooq Sheikh is the one who got married to Ramdev. Yeah, crazy.
We have to talk about the music, though.
That's literally where I was. Yeah. Let's talk about the music. It is literally like, old people adultery music. Like, this is it. Like, this is exact. But this whole movie is exactly what I thought this movie was going to be. That it had like no surprises to me. Yeah.
The music is my
I
jam,
mean,
man. It's
I was going to
totally my
say this
jam.
is your jam.
Yeah, like I don't know
I
why.
love this. Yeah.
It's just part of my fabric, man, of being. It's I grew up with this music playing every time. Like my earliest memories are of this cassette tape playing in my old ass Philips stereo or whatever, and yeah, all of the songs are great. Like Asha Bhosle, this is peak Asha Bhosle for me. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's amazing. And like watching the movie itself, it's because it's so chronologically short. The narrative goes from, it tells you the story of Umrao Jaan from Dil Cheez Kya Hai, which is her first poem as such, and then In Aankhon Ki Masti Mein is pretty much her trying to seduce and fall in love with Farooq, and then to like from there to Justuju Jiski or Ye Kya Jagah Hai Dosto, which is the final sort of tragedy. It's, yeah, what an arc told within the music itself. When Ye Kya Jagah Hai Dosto started, I just started crying. I couldn't
Me
stop.
too.
It's like because I had not watched this movie. Ye Kya Jagah Hai Dosto like really hit, like because of the context of her standing on the same piece of land where she grew up in, and then not realizing or not sort of finding her own identity in the same place where she was born. It was just magical, tragic, all of that at once, and Rekha delivering the performance of a lifetime with just her eyes was amazing.
Amrita, what is the standout tracks
I mean,
for you?
The Cheese Kya Hai is like on my playlist all the time. Like it's always playing, and this also has like a really great version of Kahe Ko
Jai
Byahi
Bide.
Bides,
Mhm.
like it's a really great version of that, which is like an old Amir Khusrau song. And Ye Kya Jagah Hai Doston is perhaps one of the all-time greatest songs ever filmed in Indian cinema. Like the rest of the movie, like I can forgive all of it, like the fact that it looks like a play that is being uh, filmed, the fact that parts of the movie are out of focus, are there, the print is terrible. All of that is fine. It's just Rekha with that face and those eyes in
The
Ye
eyes,
Kya
yeah.
Jagah Hai Doston. Like, my God, amazing.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful, and I think just the way it's shot, Rekha, and the songs and the lyrics, it's all kind of beautiful. The only track that the Farooq Sheikh track was the one that really didn't work for me, where they're just sitting in a field and holding hands like that.
I love that. I
That
love
was
that
like thoda zyada ho
song.
gaya. It's just the Farooq Sheikhness of it that it just annoys the crap out of me. I just can't stand it. So, but yeah, this is becoming a theme.
Yeah, I want to say though, like, it's so tragic that a movie of this caliber, which is on every 100 movies you must watch before you die, has not been restored, remastered, or archived
Yeah.
for posterity. It's so infuriating in a way, and I'm not a film
Yeah.
bro.
This requires kind of like a Criterion edition kind of thing,
For
right?
sure.
Like this is
Yeah.
what it deserves, it,
Yeah.
So and it's a shame that it's not available, unfortunately. No. Cool. Let's wrap up. Amrita, final words on Umrao Jaan?
If you would like to watch this film, then, well, first of all, best of luck, because the prints on YouTube are terrible. I don't even know if they have subtitles. Do they have subtitles? I didn't notice.
No.
They have AI generated auto captions, and I
Oh,
swear to God, they like the poetry of the language, and then having AI translate them. It is the most hilarious, ridiculous thing that's going on.
But I think you could probably find a better print of Junoon, which is also set in a similar time period. And it's Shashi Kapoor, Jennifer Kendall, and it is a gorgeous, gorgeous film. And it is also talks a lot about the same sort of themes, I would say, not exactly, like, it's not about courtesans or anything, but it's set in that same world.
Yeah.
And there's also Shatranj Ke Khiladi, which is a Satyajit Ray film narrated by Amitabh Bachchan, and it is directly related to what Asim was saying earlier about the masculinity of this particular era and the Nawabiyat, and how it sort of turned these men into people who couldn't do anything and couldn't accomplish a thing. And Shatranj Ke Khiladi is basically an entire treatise upon that thought.
It was one of the related videos when I was watching Umrao Jaan, and I was like, actually, I want to watch this. I was really
I think you
ready to
should.
click on it.
A good companion
by the way,
piece, yeah.
The AI captions of Umrao Jaan translate Sher as lion. Just Sujoy, final words on Umrao Jaan?
Not final words. You already know my thoughts. I really like this movie because I sort of gave in and surrendered myself to the Nawabiyat and Lucknowiyat of this movie, and the Rekha fandom took over. But one random scene that I wanted to mention is we have talked a lot about the masculinity. When Yunus Pervez and Farooq Sheikh's character Nawab Sultan, they have this one-on-one, spitting a rap battle going on against each other, and like Farooq Sheikh is getting really alpha in his own way, and Yunus Pervez says, "Abhi to tum khud chumne layak ho."
Such a good dish.
How does he come back from that?
He can't. That's why he shoots him. Like, doesn't he lift his own hands to slap him? It's just so ridiculous.
Abhi to tum khud chumne layak ho. I love that.
And he says it in like the most Yunus Pervez way, it's like so creepy in the way that he says it.
Like he would kiss him. Yeah.
Yunus Pervez. You know what? I think this is one of those movies you should hope that gets a re-release and you watch it in cinema, and not only for the print quality but also the attention it requires. This is not a movie made to watch when you have a mobile phone next to you, because it actively goes against that idea where you have to engage with it. And I think you need the concentration of a dark hall and like dimly lit, that kind of situation. So that's really the only way. I think the way I watched it is actually doing a disservice of it. And I think a lot of the problems where I couldn't connect in certain points of the movie is because of the print and watching it into things and having ads, about Grammarly in the middle of it. So I think, I think it's basically a disservice to watch this on streaming. You really, if you can, and if it is one of those movies that gets a re-release, that's the way to watch it, but I'm glad I did watch it, because I think Rekha is just amazing in this, but yeah, Amrita, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Blue Sky and still on Twitter at Amrita IQ.
Sujoy?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky at 93K. You can follow Khandaan Podcast on all our socials at Khandaan Podcast, and do check out our YouTube channel also at Khandaan Podcast.
I'm Arasim Bernie. Drop us an email at youpodcasting@gmail.com. Shout out to our patrons who make this show happen every week. And join us there. Join our lovely community. And thank you for listening. I don't know if this one is coming out first or the Tezab one is coming out. But it's Tezab and this. And then we're going to be talking about Sikandar soon. So yeah, thanks for listening.
Khandaan Podcast from the Epiglottis. Papa, are you podcasting again?